Hello, and welcome to the new Mission Career Transition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Caprellian, and I'm joined by my co-host, sister, and talent management pro, Alexandra Caprellian. We interview service members that transition to new careers, DoD representatives, and civilian HR professionals to provide you with lessons learned you won't get in a transition class and to help you transition with confidence. Are you thinking about going into real estate after your military career? Perhaps as a real estate agent, or maybe as a loan officer. Imagine being able to start your career in real estate during your transition. Well, our guest found out how to do that. On this episode, we have Matt Clanton, Marine Corps veteran, nonprofit owner, real estate agent, and loan officer. He's done all those things, and he's going to give us tips and lessons learned on how he facilitated his transition into a successful career in real estate. Matt Clanton, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, I'm excited to have you on. I know we've worked together before on recruiting duty. But to start off, I'd like you to just give our listeners an idea of where you grew up, how you got into the military, and kind of a summary of your career.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate the introduction and thanks for having me on. So where I come from, man, if I tried to explain to you where I truly come from, it would blow most people's minds. There's a little place called Love Valley, North Carolina. It's out in the middle of nowhere in North Iredell County, and is the only functioning Western town left in America. You have to walk or ride a horse in town. You can't drive. And that is not a joke. I'm not just starting it out as a joke like that. It's true. My mom lived right outside of town there, and my dad lived in West Iredell, which was about 20, 30 minutes down the road. So I had kind of the best of both worlds, right? I had country living, and then I had, a little bit more of a sane upbringing at my dad's house, where there was a little more structure, restaurants and things like that, which was great. But Love Valley, North Carolina, I call it home. It's not so great these days, but it's still hanging in there.
I'm just picturing like Western town from a Western film.
Exactly what you just pictured in your head is exactly what it's like. So the big sign that says "Welcome to Love Valley." Wooden buildings on both sides with hitch and post. It's a dirt road, so hitch and post right there on the sides. You ride your horse up, hitch your horse to it, jump off, go in the Silver Spur, which is a bar, or go into Jack's Place, which is a pool hall, or go in the general store and get your food and stuff. And there was a one-cell jail on the right-hand side at the end of town. They converted that into a church. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty much exactly what you're thinking. At the end of town, you go down the little hill through the woods, and there's a big arena there where they rodeo every Friday and Saturday. And keep in mind, it's fell off a little bit in the years. Used to, everybody would trailer their horses in pretty much every big holiday, I guess you could say, and camp out and ride horses around Fox Mountain and stuff. And nowadays it's kind of been taken over by the razors, the side-by-side off-road vehicles and stuff. But so it's lost a little bit of its charm, which I guess if you call it charm, I don't know, a bunch of drunk people asleep on horses.
Well, you knew modernization would somehow happen, but
yes.
Wow. How did the recruiter get to you?
Yeah. So the little piece of my life where I lived with my dad in civilization, there was a recruiting station in actual downtown Statesville, North Carolina. And I think I was 17 years old. No, I had just turned 18. I joined in March. So I had just turned 18 in February. I had spoken to my dad about joining the Marine Corps. My dad was Army way back, I think 1958. And I'd spoken to him about joining the Marine Corps, and it just wasn't something that I don't think he dug that very much. He said, "Hey, look, sit down on the edge of the bed with me, son. Let me talk to you." And my dad had never sat me on the edge of the bed and had to talk with me ever. So this was new to me. And he looked at me with tears in his eyes. No kidding. And he said, "I really don't want to see you go off to war. I would rather you do something that's more safe." He sat me down. I said, "Pops, this is done. Like, I've already made up my mind. This is where I'm going to go. If it's going to be the toughest choice for me, I'm going to go there and see what I can do." walked into the recruiter's office, down there in Statesville, North Carolina, and Gunnery Sergeant Booth was his name. I still remember him, big man. And I walked in the back where he was at, and I said, "Hey, how can I blow things up legally?" And he said, "Hey, well, all you got to do is sign right here, and we can get you out of here." He said, "I'm going to put you on something called an EAST, an enlistment screening test, see how you do." Did pretty well. I'm not a genius, but I did pretty well. He said, "Hey, I need you to sign here, here, and here. We'll send you to MEPS and get you out of here." So sure enough, he said, "Hey, when do you want to leave?" I told him I wanted to take the summer to hang out with some friends and stuff. And he said, "All right, we'll put you on the first bus out of here. Come next semester when you don't start school." So there I went.
Which occupation field did you go into?
So I was a 1345, a heavy equipment operator by trade. Got thrown into the mix with a line platoon at 2nd Combat Engineer Battalion at Camp Lejeune, and it was kind of all history from there. I operated a lot of heavy equipment, but I was really fortunate to be able to act as an engineer with these guys, and it's in this line platoon with Charlie Company. Shout out Charlie 2 and Charlie 4, and man, great group of guys at that time, and we went to Fallujah together a couple times and all that. So got to enjoy the best of both worlds: explosives, sweeping, mine clearing, heavy equipment operating, anything, you name it. We done it all, and it was awesome. I know you're an engineer too, so I don't have to tell you anything.
Oh no,
well, you can tell me.
Yeah,
I can tell you.
Yeah.
So 2nd CEB was that your first duty station assignment in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina?
It was, and I stayed there quite some time. I stayed there till 2009 when they hit me for orders. I was supposed to redeploy and rotate to Afghanistan with Charlie Company, and they snatched me away from that platoon and sent me over to Courthouse Bay to be permanent personnel at the schoolhouse there for combat engineers.
And what were you teaching while you were there?
No, I wasn't. I was just permanent personnel, so we were over there operating the heavy equipment and handling all the stuff for the unit over there.
Oh, I understand. And that must have been. I mean, I can't imagine there were too many HE operators there at the time.
No, I think I could count on half of one hand how many of us there were. So it was a great opportunity to get some other things rolling outside, extracurricular type of activities outside the Marine Corps.
So after your tour at the schoolhouse, where did you go?
Oh, man. I was sitting in the HE bay at the schoolhouse, and Master Sergeant Carmen, he was a gunny at the time, came in, and he said, "Hey, Ugly, you got histed. You're going on recruiting duty. I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't get some discipline in your body, you're going to fail." And he was a pretty hard charger. So I said, "You're absolutely wrong. I'm not going to fail. I'm going to crush it, and I'm going to call you whenever I do." And yeah, it was all history from there.
Yeah. So just because Sis might not understand, so what happens is, and I'm pretty sure this happens in the other services, the Marine Corps puts a premium on sending somebody that's got great performance evaluations to go on recruiting duty or they go to several different duties. So the Marines get screened, and sometimes they'll get assigned to recruiting duty. Sometimes they'll get assigned as a drill instructor at one of our recruit depots. Sometimes they go on MSG duty, Marine Security Guard duty at the U.S. embassies abroad. And occasionally there's some other duties. Some go to SOI or the School of Infantry to become combat instructors. Anyway, a lot of these things, they're not... Sometimes you can volunteer because you can kind of, as we say, choose your fate. But a lot of times Marines are just told, "Hey, this is what you're going to do, and this is when you're reporting." And it's career enhancing, but you got to make it through the duty. And it's all of them are very challenging. I only have, and I know Matt, both of us have experience on the recruiting side, but it definitely, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. So
yeah.
And you don't know what the deciding factors are of which area you're going to go to after this evaluation?
Well, I think it's different. So if you volunteer for a specific duty, sometimes you get to register what your preference is with the monitor or the detailer or whoever's handling your orders. But if you're voluntold, then you pretty much, you go where you're told. There are some opportunities to somewhat influence where you go, but for the most part, the Marine Corps is going to send you where they need you.
I have a funny story about that. So when they finally told me for recruiting duty, they sent me out to San Diego to the sales school out here, and they give you a wish list. Actually, I don't know if you knew that, Cap. They give you a wish list, and I think it was 3 or 5 places they had me jot down on this piece of paper. Needless to say, I didn't get any of those. They sent me to Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it absolutely did not choose Buffalo. But that's where I ended up.
I don't know. I kind of preferred it the way I got it. At least I didn't have any expectations. I just got orders in the mail, and they're like, "Congratulations." I'm like, "For what?" They're like, "Who got promoted?" "No, you." "What?" "No, I'm not getting promoted." "No, you got orders. You're going to recruiting duty." Like, huh?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So
and this is the first time I'm hearing the term voluntold, by the way, which I am loving. So
yeah, you got to like adopt that, rub it on you. No, it doesn't make you feel good. It's like a cactus.
Yes.
So you end up at Buffalo, but before then, you go through the training pipeline to become a recruiter. Tell me more.
Yeah, so they sent me out to San Diego, California. It was pretty cool. I'd never been out there. I retract that statement. I had been to San Diego once in my life. I came home about a week early from my second deployment to Fallujah because for my actions, my first deployment in Fallujah, I was written up for Engineer of the Year in the Marine Corps by my leadership, and I actually won that. So,
no kidding.
Marine Corps Engineer Association flew myself and my wife out. Actually, a funny story. I flew home from Iraq. Got home that afternoon. That night, they had me on a flight with my wife. My wife had to prep my uniforms and everything while I wasn't there and have them ready. And I prayed to God she had those tight because we were going to the Staffing CO Club and the O Club in Camp Pendleton to get awarded by a 2-star. And I was just praying the whole way home from Iraq, please have her have these right because we got to leave in 6 hours when I get there. And if they're wrong, I don't know what I'm going to do. Mind you, I had just pinned on corporal. I had no clue how the Marine Corps still worked because the second I got into the fleet, I went to Iraq, and I came home for 4 months, did a 2-month workout, went back to Iraq. So I had no understanding of what fleet Marine Corps was like, garrison was like, anything like that. So here we are on a flight to California, get awarded by a 2-star, do all that good stuff, stay at the Carlsbad Inn. It was great. Fell in love with San Diego. Thought it was a beautiful place. Fast forward a little bit. Here I am going back to San Diego, California for a sales school. To be honest, at this point in my career, I was pretty excited. I was a sergeant. I had, been meritoriously promoted to Lance. I was looking to excel on recruiting duty just because I really like people. I really like to communicate. I really like to, at the time I used the word sales. I try to stay away from the word sales now. I think it's kind of a derogatory term in my opinion. I like to educate and facilitate. So, here I found myself on the way to California, sales school, go through the whole pipeline. Thought the school was awesome. Learned a lot. The MC3 sales process is extraordinary. I think I still use that to this day, to be honest. I go through it with people. And I've actually been kind of a secret here. I shouldn't put it out, but I've been working on something a little on the side here to put out a sales program pretty soon. It's going to involve some MC3 type stuff. But
Marine Corps communication and consultative selling skills. Isn't that what it's called? MC3. Yes. It's like MC3. we use so many acronyms we can't even remember what they stand for. But I'm pretty sure I'm close to that.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard it actually spelled out. I never knew what it stood for.
All right, cool. I'm going to give myself a NAM. It's great. Game over.
Yeah. You pat on the back. So finished up the schoolhouse there. Like I said, put in my 3 or 5 choices or whatever. I think it was like Charlotte, Texas, California somewhere. And they hit me for first district. I remember looking over at my friend in the schoolhouse and said, "You got first district too?" And he said, "Yeah." And he was crying. No kidding. He was crying. And I said, "Why are you so upset?" He said, "Well, I had a buy name to Florida from my sergeant major down there. And I've already moved my family and everything to Florida. And I'm getting told I'm going to Buffalo, Batavia." He went to Batavia. And I said, "Well, I don't know. It's pretty cold up there, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, well, we'll see." We saw. That's for sure. We saw. It was an interesting place.
Yeah. It is interesting. If I could separate the time on recruiting duty, there were many things that I loved about Buffalo, including the people, but it's hard to do that because it's a full-time job. It's like 7 days a week.
Yes, yes, more than full time.
And you had 3 years there on recruiting duty. What happened afterwards?
Well, they gave me orders to sunny Southern California, and I was stoked. I was very, very happy to see that. My wife and kids were happy to see that. So we came out to Southern California. We actually found a home in Temecula, California, and which is, I don't know, probably about 30, 40 minutes away from Camp Pendleton without traffic. With traffic, it's a crapshoot. Maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, depending on how the highway works that day. But came out to Southern California, and at this point, I had already had a few side gigs, right? If you rewind a little bit to where I was talking about working at the schoolhouse at Courthouse Bay, that was my first free time in the Marine Corps. At that point in time, I opened up a tattoo studio and started tattooing because I was home at 4:06. At 16:06 every single day, I was home from work. Every single day, like clockwork.
So you mean to tell me you worked Western Boulevard? Is that?
No. So I lived. Courthouse Bay, as you know, sir, is out in the back of base. So I lived over the back gate bridge into Sneed's Ferry. Right off that back gate bridge, I had a tattoo studio, and I was tattooing from 4:30 p.m., 16:30 for you military folk, 16:30 till about midnight every single night. And that's where I realized, hey, there's something here to second strings of income.
So you had already developed a business acumen much earlier in your career. I mean, you had hard lessons learned on what it means to start up a business, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I mean, even before that, I liked supplementing my income and doing something outside of just. Yeah, I get it. You're a Marine 24/7, but at the same time, when I got home from work, I still had to account. I had some accountability to my wife and children, so I would find things that align with hanging out with them too. So like even before this, those little tight play sets. Do you remember those?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
Okay. So the backyard play sets, they got pretty extravagant around my time as a Lance Corporal. I don't know if that was something that we just missed out on because we were a little bit older or whatever, but I was a little jealous, right? So I would find those on Camp Lejeune yard sales of all places, and people would say, oh, you can come pick it up for free if you'll just get it out of my yard. I would go home, I would pressure wash it, clean it up a little bit, order a replacement part if I had to for $10 or whatever, and I would turn around, I would sell these things for $500, $600, $800 a piece. So I was making sometimes what I was making as a Lance Corporal, my paychecks, in selling little Tykes play sets back on, whatever.
That's awesome.
It was fun. And I would keep them for about a week or so and let my kids play on them. And then I would offload that one and get another one for them to play on. So they loved it.
Oh, that's great. Well,
yes.
I mean, and I see it. It's like the family-friendly side hustle.
It is. It is the ultimate family-friendly side hustle for small children. From there, obviously, fast forward back into Courthouse Bay and non-deployable units and all that. Started tattooing, making pretty good money. I was making more tattooing than I was making as a corporal in the Marine Corps at that time. And it spread like wildfire. The Marines, obviously, very loyal niche. So clientele speaking, they would just refer all their friends. They would bring friends over, tattoo everybody. It was awesome, to be honest. I really enjoyed it. And then it got me some hookups. I probably shouldn't share this, but it got me some hookups, right? I was tattooing master sergeant stuff as a corporal. So, I was able to have a little leverage here and there sometimes. But fast forward back, recruiting duty and all that, didn't have time for side hustle, sold everything, focused on that, excelled out there, recruiter of the year, meritorious staff. Really, really fell in love with the sales process. Not so much the recruiting aspect of it, like the command and the Marine Corps side, but seeing how I could positively affect people's lives changed something inside of me. I could identify situations in people's lives, and I could turn those situations into better situations by telling them what the Marine Corps could do for them and getting them signed up. So fast forward again, out here in Southern California, unbeknownst to me at the time, my last unit in the Marine Corps, I had fully planned on going the full 20. Got to about 14 years time in service, and I pulled shocks. I got out.
So what happened? I mean, where would you say you made that mental switch when you knew that you weren't going to stay in? You weren't going to ride it out to 20 to earn a pension?
Yeah, so I was at MWSS 372 as my last unit out here. It was the first time I'd ever been in the wing. I got word that they were trying to send me to Okinawa unaccompanied. And mind you, at this time, I'd been married. Let's see, I'm coming up on my 17th anniversary right now with my wife. So I've been married quite a few years at this point.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's not easy.
Thank you. And my kids are older. I have an 18-year-old now and a 15-year-old daughter. And when they started talking about sending me unaccompanied to Japan or to Oki or wherever they were going to send me, it just didn't sit well with me. At this point, I had already picked up my real estate license in Southern California and had been selling real estate for quite some time at that point. I think probably about a year or so, I had been selling real estate. And life was pretty good. I had liked it. My father was a real estate broker. At one point in life, my mom was a real estate broker. So I'd kind of been around it. And decided at that point, I said, hey, I think I'm going to bet on myself. I think I'm going to get out. And my wife was 100% on board. She said, you can do it. You're already making, quadruple what you're making in the Marine Corps. You're losing money by going in every day. Just go full steam ahead. So that's what we did.
That's great. How did you strike that? I mean, because that's a complex balance, right? I mean, even if you're in a unit that isn't that busy, tell me how you kind of figured out that balance. And I asked this, and the reason why I asked this question is a lot of people come up on the end of their military career, whether they're going to transition or they're going to retire. And what makes sense to me is being deliberate and not going like doing a cold start as soon as you get your DD-214, but like doing a warm start and experimenting. So how did you make that work?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So where I feel like it becomes easier for you as an active duty service member to get into real estate, and as long as you do it beforehand, like you were talking about, your clientele, they're walking around you all day long, every single day, and they're working the same exact hours for the most part as you are. So I knew if this is my clientele and I'm going to stick to the VA niche, I'm going to stick to the veteran niche and sell these guys homes and help them become homeowners, they're working the same hours as me. So they probably can't go see a house if I can't go see a house. They probably can't attend a home inspection if I can't attend a home inspection. And for the few situations where it didn't work out that way, I made sure I had a team around me. I picked up a great transaction coordinator. Her name's Brandy Harris. I still actually use her to this day. We just opened escrow today on a home out here in Southern California, and Brandy, I just shot her the contract, and she sends out everything, opens escrow, takes care of it, all that for me. So having a strong team behind me helped where I couldn't physically be there or spend time on site.
So I think you briefly mentioned what a transaction coordinator does. What are other members of the team, whether you had them at the beginning while you were still on active duty or later? Like what makes up a team for a real estate agent?
You can probably do the majority of it yourself. However, a good transaction coordinator is going to bridge that gap. Brandy, she already knew termite companies. She already knew home inspectors. She knew appraisers. So realistically, the lender normally orders the appraisals, but in the event you have a client that says, hey, I want to get an appraisal done on my home before we get in a contract or something like that, just to give us an idea, she already knew those people. So I really, really leaned on Brandy. I would call her up and I'd say, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea who to call. I have no idea what this paper means or what they're asking me. Can you please look at this email? And she coached me. She was a real estate broker before. So she spent a lot of time on the phone with me. And then find yourself a good lender. If you can find a lender who dual hats, kind of like I do. I'm a real estate agent and I'm a mortgage loan originator. Those guys, they understand the real estate side and they understand the loan side, so they can help fill in all those gaps and those voids of information that you don't know, that little pieces of education that you need and that you learn along the way. They're just going to help expedite that by answering your questions and kind of being on call. And shout out to Chris Oliveras. He was with Fairway at the time, still a great friend of mine to this day. But I tell you what, that man, he helped me a tremendous amount when I would call him at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night and say, dude, I have no idea. Like, can we even do this? So
my dad is a real estate, well, our dad, sis, our dad is a real estate agent. And I know that I mentioned this when I talked to you earlier. My dad tries to convince people to not go into real estate because he was like, don't expect to make any money in your first year. And I think some of it's because I guess if you're starting from scratch, you don't have that book of sale, you don't have that client base, or you may not be, I guess, surrounded by folks that has a large population of individuals that will eventually buy a home. Maybe that's some part of the challenge. Did you see that as a challenge when you were entering into real estate, or were there other challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I think that's probably the case for 99% of the people who jump into this industry. You have no book of business, right? Like you said, no Rolodex, nobody to call on. However, my client base was walking around me every single day. So all I had to do was educate myself enough to where I could spit out some things that sounded interesting to them and show them the whiffle, what's in it for me, to them, of home ownership. I had their ear already. They were already around me all day long. So I just talked to them and I started building up that trust. I call it a BLT, believe like trust. Every day I would just pound in the BLT, believe like trust. Everybody I would talk to them about real estate, have a real estate conversation, ask them if they know anybody that's looking to buy or sell. And again, I go right back to the VA client base being very, very loyal. They are going to work with you. So if you're a service member that's looking to get out, if you're, making that transition, start early and start telling people about what you do and why you do it. And I think having the why is very, very important, because you can build the client base. You can go out and door knock, you can do mailers, you can do whatever, but don't sleep on the fact that your clients are all around you every single day. And if you show them that you have their best interest at hand and at heart, they're going to work with you because they want to work with you. And you have to believe that.
They have to believe it and you have to believe it. And correct me, and I guess that's the reason why you don't like calling it sales, because sales looks at somebody as a mark or somebody as this is a pending financial transaction. You view it differently. And that's probably where you get your sense of purpose from. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So I've seen what real estate has done for myself in life, and I've seen what it's done for the many clients that I have in my database. I mean, I had one call me yesterday. He is on a field op in 29 Palms. He owns a house. He owned a house in Southern California that I did a refinance on for him a couple years ago. And now he's living in Hawaii. He's stationed out in Hawaii. And he called me. He wants to buy a house. He wants to get pre-approved and buy a house out there. He had some questions. And I said, Sean, do you mind telling me how much you made on that house, man, and how long you owned it? He said, yeah. I bought it in 2019. You refinanced it for me in like 2021 or whatever. I sold it at the end of last year or mid last year. I made about $160,000 on it. And he's a sergeant now. So,
wow, that's great.
I think having that purpose, understanding that it's not sales, it's someone's livelihood, it's someone's ability to pay an unexpected debt, maybe an unexpected healthcare expense. We're going through a situation right now with my father-in-law. He had a stroke, and we have all these expenses that are coming up. So being able to leverage real estate, or to take a HELOC, a home equity line of credit out, or to do something to help our position for our family, that's massive. And this is what I try to portray to people. I try to say, look, I'm not going to sell you. I'm going to give you all the relevant information, and you're going to take that and do with it what you please. And I know what's going to happen. I've done this a million times. You're going to see how this is going to benefit you. and we're going to make you a homeowner, and then we're going to turn you into an investor because that's my long-term goal. I don't care about the transaction. I care about the relationship. I want to see you go from one home to many homes. I want to see you create a true retirement for yourself. And in doing so, we become great friends and lifelong friends, and now we're both wealthy together.
No, that's great. And I think that also, I'm sure there are times too where if you're the honest broker of information, you've got to look somebody in the eye and say, like, you can't do this. Like, I know what you want, but that you're not going to get there the way you think you're going to get there. Have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think depending on which hat I put on, as a realtor, I've said, hey guys, this isn't in your budget, or you're doing this wrong, or don't go buy that car. Different things like that. Or, hey, maybe it's a better fit for you to rent right now. Believe it or not, I know I'm supposed to be telling everybody to buy, but if it's not a good time for you, if it's not a good fit for you, if it's not the right time in your life, yeah, look them in the eye and tell them, hey, look, I think renting's better for you because of this, this, this. As a mortgage loan originator, a mortgage professional, absolutely. And that's a very, very tough conversation to have. But we have those hard conversations, I think, more so and more often than a real estate agent.
You were a real estate agent in Southern California, but I know that's not all that you're doing. So what did you do after you started getting out on your own, out of the military as a real estate agent?
I was propositioned. I needed to move home. We needed to move home from Southern California to North Carolina to help with my father-in-law when he had his first stroke. And at the time, I was only licensed as a realtor in Southern California, so I didn't know really exactly what I was going to do. I was going to go sell real estate in North Carolina potentially, but I was propositioned by Cody Stevens, the owner of Capital Mortgage, our mortgage brokerage right now. And he said, look, you talk to us all the time. You ask us a lot of questions anyway. You already know the process. Why don't you become an LO? Why don't you come work with us? And we'll teach you everything you don't know. And I said, I don't know about that, man. That seems hard, and it kind of just seems not great. Like, you guys have the hard conversations. And he said, dude, just come over here. Like, try it. So got my loan originator license, and it was kind of all history from there, to be honest with you. I mean, I loved it. I fell in love with being a mortgage professional and doing the loans and originating. So I've expanded. Now I'm licensed as a LO in California, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, and then our brokerage is licensed in a few other states as well. But that kind of turned into a whirlwind. And I said, okay, well, if I'm helping veterans on the real estate side, purchasing and selling real property, and I'm handling the financial side of the transaction as the LO, I've got my hands so far into their business anyway, I might as well just be a coach to them all out. So I think it was about August of 2020, we did our first transaction under Project Valor, which is a veterans initiative that I started then. And I guess you could look at Project Valor as a veterans initiative, a real estate type veterans initiative, where we connect service members and veterans all across the country to our network of real estate agents who have been personally vetted by me. I make sure that they understand the ins and outs of the VA loan. I ask them some pretty tough questions. I look at their sales history. I look at pretty much everything that you could possibly look at it at a realtor under that type of microscope. I look at that. I interview them. I make sure they're a good fit for my clients. And then we get them connected on the real estate and lending side to get them taken care of. And then we give them a portion of their closing cost as a gift through close of escrow to help with their closing as a thank you for their service. So it's a completely free program. And I think as of last week, we just broke $200 and some $1,000 that we've helped out with closing costs.
Wow. So if I'm a service member and I want to be a first-time home buyer, you essentially provide all the coaching and information necessary to know how to use the VA home loan from cradle to grave.
Yes. So that was the goal. I wanted to make sure that when you go to projectvalor.org, you put in your information. It's a very quick submission form: name, email, phone number, quick synopsis of what you're doing, ETS, EAS, PCS, whatever it is. drop that information. You and I will get on a phone call together. I will take you, like you said, cradle to grave. I will take you from the beginning. If you tell me I don't even know what the word escrow means, we're going to talk about it. If you have no idea what EMD and earnest money deposit is, we're going to talk about it. I'm going to coach you through everything. I'm going to make the connections. I'm going to make sure that you get pre-approved. I'm going to QC the entire file from beginning to end to make sure that it meets and exceeds your expectations. And all of this, by the way, for free. And then when you get your closing disclosure and your settlement statement, when you go to close on the house that you're purchasing or the house that you're selling, you're going to see an agent credit in the amount of blank. And that's going to be money towards your closing costs. And that's putting our money where our mouth is, saying, I truly appreciate it. My family and I truly appreciate your service.
I'll be sure to make sure that I put that in the episode notes, projectvalor.org. Yeah, that's great information. I've never heard of anything like that before. Before I met you and before we've talked. So you've done, and it's a 501c3, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're actually going through everything for the 501c3 right now with our CPA. We've had some minor setbacks, but that should all be finalized pretty soon.
Okay. So let me ask you a hypothetical, because you've got experience now as a real estate agent, as a loan officer, and then an organizer or a lead of a 501c3 nonprofit organization. If I'm a service member and I'm getting ready to transition, let's say I've made the mental decision that I'm going to get out and I'm interested in becoming a real estate agent, what would you tell that individual as far as the steps that they want to think about as they prepare for either the end of their contract, whether they're getting out or they're retiring?
So I think that's a really good question. I get asked that about daily from service members through social media. I would say, think about where you want to be, right? This is not a 6-month view. This is not a 1-year view. This is not a 2-year view. This is a 5-10-year view. Where do you want to be, and kind of work in reverse? Do I see myself living where I'm at now? Because if you're not, if you're going to go back to your hometown, then the guys that you're serving and the ladies that you're serving beside of right now are I mean, they could be of help and use, but at the same time, they're probably not. So you need to start getting your feet wet in those localities. So maybe you start Googling real estate course in Idaho or Nebraska or wherever you're from, and start looking at that. Read the reviews, see how how those courses go. I know in California, it's one of the more difficult ones, and you have to pass 3 collegiate level courses and then take the test on all of them and then take the state exam. But I would say start there, take the test, see if any of that stuff speaks to you. If you're taking the test or you're doing the course and you just aren't interested at all, maybe it's not a good fit. And maybe, and this is a beautiful thing about real estate. There's many facets of real estate. You don't have to be a real estate salesperson. You can go be an appraiser. You can be a home inspector. You can do many, many different things around the real estate industry and still have that type of satisfaction of working with people. And you can be a title rep. You can be an escrow agent, whatever. But I would say kind of get your feet wet, talk to somebody who's doing it, reach out to somebody like myself who's doing it that'll take the time to respond and give you an idea about what the day-to-day is like. And then maybe go shadow somebody. I never think that the left seat, right seat stuff that we did with turnover in Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff, I don't think that's a bad gig. I like that. If I can go sit with somebody for a week or two and see how they live life, that's probably going to tell me a lot about whether or not I like it. So.
And you have experience as a loan officer. Now, I think most people understand, generally speaking, what a real estate agent does. What does a loan officer do? And I'd put the same question to you. If I'm thinking about getting out in a year and I'm thinking about becoming a loan officer, what are some of the things I should be thinking about?
Yeah, another great question. So imagine jumping downstairs head first. No, I'm just kidding. I
don't want to be a loan officer.
Yeah. So I'm just joking. So the loan officer side of the house is a little bit different. We're dealing with all the finances. So this is where it does pay to have a very, very strong and structured team. So I have my assistant, Laura. I have my processor, which Laura, God bless her, dual hats, being my assistant, my LOA, and my processor. And then I have Sean Holly as processors. I have other teammates like Carlos and Torin and Sophie and all these people that are there in lieu of me having to do everything myself. So it truly does become like a family. And we start looking at all the numbers, right? If you need a pre-approval, which most people need a pre-approval before they can go shop with their realtor because they need some type of parameter of what they can afford and can't afford, or what they do want to afford and don't want to afford. So we'll gather all your documentation, your pay stubs, your bank statements, your W-2s, your tax returns, depending on if you own real estate and all that. And we put all the puzzle pieces together and we come up with what you can and can't afford. And we have those hard conversations with people sometimes about, hey, look, right now, due to your FICO scores and your credit history, you're not in a position to purchase a home. But let me put you in contact with, shout out to my credit guy, Sam Parker. Let me put you in contact with these guys who can help you get on the right track, and then, keep you in our, keep you in our ecosystem, I guess you could say, until you're ready to purchase. So we don't just leave you out to dry. We actually help you get into a good position.
But if I wanted to go the loan officer route, are there any other tips that you would think, I should be thinking about?
I would say that one's going to be a little bit different. Go find a loan officer and sit with them. I guess it is the same in that regard. Go spend some time with a loan officer and see if you actually like that. Or, maybe Google some videos about what a loan officer does, or, I'd say that's probably your best bet. If you're not a numbers person, if you don't like math, if you don't like being on the phone all the time, 24/7, probably not cut out to be a loan officer. I work 10 times as hard, and all my realtor partners are going to get upset with me about this. I work 10 times as hard as a loan officer when I put that hat on than I do as a real estate agent.
It's a fundamentally different work style as opposed to lifestyle, right? You're constant as a real estate agent, you're constantly interacting with clients, but it's like feet on the deck. Whereas I know that there are a lot of loan officers that sometimes it's a lot of teleworking. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm licensed in a ton of states. I don't know if I've ever met with a client face to face. It's always through Zoom or FaceTime or telephone calls or text messages. And that's why but now there is a positive. My wife and I travel and we vacation a lot. I never have to be co-located. However, you're always working when you're on vacation too. So there's that.
It's about setting boundaries too. I learned that's one thing that I learned while I was on recruiting duty. Actually, I learned how bad I was at setting boundaries. I was horrible at setting boundaries, and I've had the benefit of hindsight. And I know some folks that did a really good job of that. And they were our station commanders. We had a couple that were exceptionally good at that. I don't know how they did it. They still made mission and they took care of the team and they took care of the family.
Wow.
So yeah, I can tell you about that later, but, hey sis, am I missing anything? Do you have any questions?
No, I mean, I was going to question what it was like, going from transitioning out into where you are now, but it seems like there was so much overlap from being in the military and finding what you really wanted to do while being in it. And I can only imagine, what was that like for you? For me, I can only imagine having basically a full-time job in the military and then trying to work in another full-time job at the same time. I know you're talking about hours and, the people that you were working with could have been your clients and the hours would match the two of you or that group against yours. But what was the stress? Was there any stress? Did you hit any stress during that time?
I don't think there was stress related to what I was doing on a daily basis or the hours that I was pulling. Shout out to recruiting duty for that. I got used to working a lot. I was used to working, 16, 18-hour days on recruiting duty. So when I transitioned to doing fleet Marine Force type stuff and then real estate on top of it, again, I'll go back to, I don't work nearly as hard as a real estate agent as I do as a lender, as a loan officer. So, doing that on the side, it just didn't bother me a whole lot. I actually was really excited. I will say the only stress that probably came about was whenever I was transitioning out. And it became very real that I was betting on myself and my family was relying on me to not fail. I never feel like I'm going to fail. I never worry that I'm going to fail, but it's always in the back of your mind that not only do I not have to fail, but I have to produce at a high level because I'm a Marine. That's what we do. And I put a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on myself to work harder, work smarter, work better, make more money, help more families, beat my numbers from last year. And I do that to this day to myself. I want to exceed what I did last year. I want to help more families than I did last year. I want to crush my numbers with Project Valor that I did last year, which is going to be very, very difficult. But I think that's the biggest stress. I put it on myself. It's not really the finances. It's not really anything like that. It's just like you said, Cap, it's the time management. It's making sure that when I'm in the zone and I'm pre-approving people and I'm talking to people, I'm open escrow and I'm sitting at the computer and I'm going to meetings and stuff, that I'm not leaving my wife and kids out to dry, that I'm still showing up for their sports. I'm still showing up for my daughter's dance, or I'm still taking my wife out to eat. Today I stopped right before we jumped on this podcast and I cooked lunch for my wife and me. So I think, just being cognizant of no one has you on a time hack anymore. You're on that on your own, and it's up to you to make the most of it. I think that's the biggest stressor.
And I appreciate what you just said, because that clarifies maybe some of my statements. When I was talking about setting boundaries and being good at it, what I meant is it doesn't matter whether or not you work an 8-hour day or you work a 16-hour day, but the time that you do have to spend with your family, you protect.
Yes.
And you maximize the value of every minute that you have, whether it's with your girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, or kids. And so it sounds like you're striking that balance, and that's definitely something that you probably learned over time.
Yes, absolutely I did, because there have been times where I've been so burnt out that I just couldn't function. And I know that you can relate to that. We crossed, I think we brushed shoulders a few times on recruiting duty where we both look like walking corpses. So that it's not healthy, So I did. I learned the hard way there, and I carried that out with me into this industry. And there's times where I might get a little overwhelmed and might have a lot going on. I always take the time to be appreciative and say, thank God I have this business. Thank God I have the clientele and the amazing clientele that I have. So the biggest thing is I get to put food on my family's table. I get to spend time with my family. I get to go on vacation with my family and still earn a good living, knowing that I'm doing what's right. So I have a clear conscience, right? I know that I'm improving the lifestyle of the people that I interact with on a daily basis. And that's the most important thing that I've ever done in my life.
Sis, do you have any other questions?
No, I mean, I think it was just, it really does kind of lend a hand to understanding what kind of challenges emotionally and physically you can actually go through when you're trying to transition out. I mean, one of the biggest things that I can notice is that, from these conversations and these podcasts with other people, going from a very regimented schedule into a very independent life of having to figure it out on your own and setting those very high expectations, especially in your position. I mean, that can set some limitations for some people, but to keep going and to keep pushing and setting those goals for yourself every year, I mean, that is something that we have to do. And, in a regular corporate world, we're just doing our start of year goal setting based on what we did last year and the feedback that we got from, our coworkers. So, having to go through that, but you have to set your own goals. Nobody's setting it for you. So that, that leads to possible stress. But when you reach those own goals that you set for yourself, I can only imagine how you feel about it.
Yes, I agree. It's very rewarding. And again, I'm feeding my family, and I know in my heart that I'm doing what's best for other people because I'm coaching them, I'm guiding them down a path that's going to ultimately result in their success in life. I think anybody would agree that structuring or setting up or saving a retirement fund in their home, essentially, I'm doing air quotes there, is a very safe bet. And we look at the last 80 some years of real estate data in the United States, we've seen that over 85 years, real estate on average has appreciated about 3.5 to 3.8%. So not bad.
Not bad.
Matt, we've covered a lot of ground. If individuals want to get in touch with you, if our listeners have questions that maybe we didn't cover, how can they find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And thanks for spending some time with me today, Cap. Thanks for having me on, both of you. I truly appreciate it. To find me, it's as simple as going to projectvalor.org if you want to put in your information. If you know anybody that's looking to buy, sell, refinance, anything like that, put in their information as long as they allow you to. And social media. Social media is really the way that I connect with everybody. I spend an extraordinary amount of time on it. So Instagram handle would be at @the_Matthew, MATTHEW_Clanton, CLANTON. And then Facebook, it is what it is, Matthew Clanton. That's about it there. Capital Mortgage, that is the company that I hang my license for to do loan origination. Capital Mortgage is a great company. Like I said, you're not going to find me if you go there. I mean, you might find some stuff about me, but that's not how you get in touch with me. And then my cell phone's always on, 910-650-7214. That is my direct cell number, so you can call me, text me, whatever you need to do, and we'll talk.
You sure? You sure you want me to share that?
It's
all over my
it's all over my social. It's everywhere. So, the more people that contact with me, I truly believe in my heart that if they make contact with me, we are both going to benefit in some way, shape, or form.
That's great. Well, thanks a lot for sharing your time and sharing the things that you've learned. A lot of great lessons learned for any service member getting ready to transition that wants to do something in real estate is going to benefit with the information that you've provided. So, Matt, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate having you on.
Thank you all very much. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
And Matt has left the digital studio. It was another episode. I learned a lot about the real estate industry. I thought I knew, and I'm just so impressed because it seems like he was just ingrained with the mindset to work hard, to push himself to the limit, to see what he was capable of. And I think he never had a real difficulty with a mindset shift when he was getting ready to transition because it was already there.
Yeah, no, I believe that too. He, from the get-go, he just wanted his hands in as many things as possible. And the fact that he could multitask to that level is such an amazing trait to have, and just constantly looking for the next action. And I think that was crazy from, a heavy equipment operator, and then an engineer, and then recruiting, and then opening a business, and then going into realty business and doing all that while in the military. That's nuts.
Yeah. There was something else that he said, and I remember when he was correcting me on when I said the word sales, like getting sales skills. And he said he doesn't look at it like that. He looks at it as being an educator and a facilitator. And I think there's a tie between his mindset and looking at it with on what he does on a daily basis with fulfilling a sense of purpose. One of my favorite books, it's by Viktor Frankl. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. If you haven't read that book, it's like the book I keep multiple copies to hand out. It's the only book I do that with. And Viktor Frankl talks about, he looked at it from being a Holocaust survivor, but just how big of a role a sense of purpose is in survival. Now, certainly we're not talking about survival, but we are talking about being able to make it through trying times, being able to endure the stress, particularly the stress that he put on himself. And I think a lot of that was born by seeing purpose in the actions that he took every single day, whether it was put food on the family table or it was being able to really help somebody become a homeowner and build wealth.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the work that we do these days is you have to lead with empathy, and being able to do that, in his day-to-day with his personal life and in the work that he does is something that people need to really focus on as well.
Agreed, 100%. Well, this wraps up another great conversation. And thank you very much for listening. If you're still listening to this podcast right now, you're our biggest supporters. If you're interested in supporting this podcast, by the way, you can follow New Mission Career Transition on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or other podcast apps. You can follow us on Instagram at New Mission CT. That's New Mission Charlie Tango. We would also love to hear your feedback. You can DM us on Instagram, or if you're old school, you could send us email at our email address, newmissionct@gmail.com. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you are preparing for your own transition, know that I'm right there with you. Stay focused and keep attacking.